again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm your host, John, and a pretty straightforward topic today, so let's get right to it. What is the most effed up thing you've ever seen in class? Not safe for work. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Definitely the time an English teacher gave us an assignment to give a short speech on a moment that changed our lives. He didn't mean anything bad by it. He thought it'd be all inspirational and shit. Nope, not that sort of high school. Speech topics included the day I was raped, the day I tried crack, the day I found my dead parents after an overdose, the day my mom tried to murder me, and the day my brother killed himself in front of me, and on and on and on. After 5 or so, the teacher stopped it, and we spent a while just talking through shit. We decided to continue the presentations, but everyone would be counted as getting an A on the assignment whether they chose to present or not. Anyone that wasn't comfortable listening could go to the library as a free period, and the school made counselors available to the class afterwards. The teacher helped the rape victim talk to the police also, and they got the other student that did it. I had a charming young ASL teacher my junior year. She was super cute and funny, absolutely one of those teachers a lot of students crushed on. Her boyfriend was paralyzed from the waist down, some accident when he was a teenager. The nature of his accident meant he might someday walk again, I guess, but he was still a ways off from that. He comes to visit the class one day, and our teacher insists he shows his progress towards leaning to walk again. He clearly didn't want to, and at first she came off as just kind of overbearingly supportive, but it escalated, and she flat out bullied him into pushing himself out of his wheelchair and taking a couple of fumbling steps before he fell over. And her laugh, it was so shrill and cruel, and she didn't even bother helping him back into his chair until he asked. I used to be friends with this girl in high school, and her boyfriend committed suicide. After a week off school, we were sitting in class about to do a test, till one of the girls shouts out and laughs, "I heard you killed your boyfriend." My friend stands up, grabs her chair and swings it at the girl's face, and then lays on top of her, punching the shit out of this girl. The teacher just stood there not knowing what to do. Well, the boys pulled her off and I dragged her outside. The girl had to get stitches and ended up missing teeth. Kid asked to use the bathroom. Teacher said no. He waited as long as he could but had diarrhea, and he ran out of the class. It was everywhere. He was homeschooled starting the next day. High school. Kid raises his hand, asked if he could go to the nurse, said he was feeling lightheaded. The teacher told him, no, go in between classes. With about 20 minutes to go before the bell, the kid ended up slumping over, falling out of his chair, hitting his face on the ground, and the teacher felt all concerned at that point, lost all respect for the teacher that day. Kid number 1 gets angry with kid number 2. Kid number 1 stabs kid number 2 with a pen on his knee. Kid number 2 looks down to his knee, gets the item out, and stabs kid number 1 with said pen in the arm. Kid number 1 gets the pen out. Both kids start laughing. The teacher saw the whole thing and carried on like nothing happened. On its face, this story seems disturbing, but then I think back to my youth, which predates the internet for some of you, and we used to have rock fights, so pen stabbing? Just another Tuesday. I went to a STEM magnet school. Some people were pretty competitive, but parents were worse. There was one girl whose parents wouldn't feed her if she didn't succeed academically. An A- on a single quiz counted as not succeeding. My guidance counselor reported them, and then Child Protective Services had to get involved. The only part we saw was that she was very, very skinny and basically stunted, height-wise. When I was in 7th grade, this girl just really chill, took off her shirt and pants and was walking around with only underwear. It wasn't an all-girls school, everyone was there. The teacher wasn't paying attention, but when he realized, he yelled at the girl to put her shirt on. She said, "Oh, yeah," and wasn't even embarrassed. And a bomb threat. Kid got stabbed in the face with a pencil. With an effing pencil, John Wick. Also, everyone saw that exact moment. The surprising part was that the kid was very casual about it. Probably signed the medical papers with his check, too. Middle school. In 8th grade Spanish class, there was a loud kid that couldn't keep his mouth shut. Anyway, one day he was being loud and my Spanish teacher says something along the lines of, "Okay, insert name, enough is enough," and pulls out a roll of duct tape. Before we all know it, she's wrapping it around his head and mouth. Never saw her again after that class. Her sweater even stayed on her chair for months. Most effed up thing was something that happened to me. In 3rd grade, one of my teachers stood me up in front of class and told them one day I was going to get shot and killed because I didn't listen. I wasn't a bad kid by any means, just had some trouble sitting still and whatnot. Basically your average, slight ADHD type, that's all. I didn't think much of it at the time, but I still went home and told my parents about it. My dad went to the school and came absolutely unglued. They almost called the cops on him. Only years later would I really understand what an effed up thing that is to say to about a 3rd grader, and why my dad reacted the way he did. Yeah, that's a pretty awful thing to say to a young person, and I mean, there are tactful ways that your father could have approached it, but I don't think any jury would convict him for raging out about that. UK student here, so this is rare for us. A kid found a bullet somewhere that looked encased, like closed like a starfish shape at the end. He fetched it into school and took it in our CDT class, workshop I think Americans would call it. He put it in a vise, aiming it toward the wall, and whacked it hard with a hammer. As I was watching what he was doing, I aired a slight note of caution, and being from Yorkshire, that included, "The F you doing there, you daft punk?" After I realized it would deter him, I edged slowly to the other end of class. Anyway, he whacks it, and it makes an almighty pop. I see him drop, holding his ears, and smoke went all over the place whilst more people shit themselves. Luckily, it was a blank or a firing cap, but it made a right massive bang. The teacher, who was an angry drunk, comes storming in, kicking off. The kid got dragged outside and expelled for a month, and our school tried to talk it down and not mention a bullet. When I was probably in the 8th grade, one of the 8th graders that was known for being someone you didn't want to F with was paid to beat up one of my classmates. He beat the shit out of him in front of the library. Kid's face was all left up afterwards. Same kid that witnessed his father stabbing his mother in the 5th grade. I never learned if she lived or what happened to the dad, but that poor fella went through a lot. Elementary school. There was some kid named Alex. Definitely had some mental issues, but because we're kids, so we tease him. So it was just a normal day. I really wasn't expecting anything crazy. Then there was a smell, an odd smell, coming from the other side of the room. Alex shat on a chair. So we were on a carpet a few feet away from the chairs. Alex has absolutely no signs of shit on him. Pants were clean, nothing unbuttoned, belt still on. The kid managed to shit on a chair, clean everything up, leave the scene of the crime, and leave us to deal with it. You want to know how we knew? This kid effing laughed and said he did it. I never saw him again, but the memory lingered like the smell. Alex, if you're out there, I just want you to know I was nice to you. I liked you. Please don't use your ninja shitting abilities on me. I saw a teacher lose her job over a slow kid named Sean. Sean was held back 2 years, was 12 years old in the 4th grade, and was closing in on 6 feet tall already. Just a large kid all the way around. Their classroom was off of the library, and I was in the library for some odd reason, but I heard yelling coming from the back of the library. As I got closer, I realized it was Sean and his teacher, Mrs. Lumpkin, hollering at each other rather heatedly. It all came to a head when he called her an old bitch. She was pushing 70 at this point, and she yelled back, "She isn't going to take any more backtalk from a stupid N-word that can't even read." This was in front of her entire class, and now half the library. We all heard it. There was no getting around what she said. She was angry and meant every word. Mrs. Lumpkin wasn't there after that. Sean lasted another few months before he took a swing at the gym teacher for calling a foul on him playing basketball. I sat next to a girl in my science class. She obviously had issues and would regularly pretend to be different animals in class. I had the unfortunate task of sitting next to her. One day we were all sitting down getting on with our work when I heard a very strange soft sort of ripping noise coming from the right where I was sitting. She had used a metal compass to slice her arms apart. Blood was everywhere, covering the table she was sitting at like something out of a horror movie. She then picked up her blood-soaked ruler and licked it clean in front of the entire class, who was by this point all staring in absolute horror. She was taken out of school, and we never saw her again. I'll never get that image out of my head. 8th grade. We were running after a friend to give him birthday beats. Nothing crazy, just like hitting his arms and legs. So he was running in the cafeteria and just collapsed. We just stood around not knowing what was going on. He quickly turned blue and everyone was panicking. Sadly, he passed away. Turns out he had a heart defect and it just stopped. Really unfortunate and sad. It was on his birthday also. Not me, an ex-boyfriend. High school, about 25 years ago in a really small town. One of the teachers had been exposed to Agent Orange as a soldier in Vietnam. Sometimes he would get horrible flashback episodes and he'd think he was still a soldier. When it rained, he canceled class as that could set him off. All the students and faculty and the parents knew about his flashback episodes. He told the students if he had an episode not to move, just wait in your seat until he comes out of it. One day he had a flashback in the middle of class. He's a soldier again, on the lookout for the Viet Cong. A girl student freaks out and tries to rush out of the class. Big mistake. The teacher tackles her to the ground thinking she's the enemy. It took like 6 boys to pry the teacher off the girl. The teacher resigned the next day. If everyone was aware of these flashbacks, which could be potentially extremely dangerous for children, I find it hard to believe that that person could remain in that position, but, the world has changed, so who knows? Crazy. My high school was pretty mellow. I went to a vocational school, so you had 14 to 15-year-olds goofing off with power tools. During your first year, you tried different shops to decide which to go into. During my automotive rotation, we had some students incorrectly jack up a car and cause it to tip over. During the electrical rotation, we were learning to solder wires. A student mindlessly started chewing on some solder like a pen. The teacher flew across the room, hollering at her that the solder is toxic. My own accident happened during my HVAC rotation. I was learning how to weld and pushed too hard on the flux I was using. The heated material smacked me in the face and burnt me pretty good. Pretty average compared to some of these stories, but it was never boring there, lol. In my Spanish class, I was in the second row in the back. There were 2 people next to me, 1 seat in front of the other. They would moan, curse, and just be weirdos. But one day, while we were doing a lesson, the one in front reaches his hand behind me and started giving a hand job to the guy behind me. I, who was in earshot, had to hear everything, and since I was not trying to make an enemy at the time, I just tried to ignore it. Our teacher had been hearing and was focused on grading, didn't see what they were doing. They did eventually stop, but I can never remove that from my memory. In Cadaver lab, someone nicked the colostomy bag and its contents spilled out on my classmate and the floor. This wasn't the worst part though. Since the cadavers are usually donated, the school has a policy of every piece of the person is kept together. So when the school cremates the cadaver, the whole body is given back to their family in ash form. Meaning when a piece of fat is removed from a cadaver, it is placed into a to-be cremated bucket. So our professor at the time made the students scoop up as much of the contents into the container of to-be cremated bits. In elementary or primary school, one kid got his house burned down. If I remember correctly, it was an accident. Somebody left something on. So he didn't go to school that day, and the school held a flash donation for him. When he came to school the next day, one of the teachers asked, "I heard something burned yesterday. What happened?" And the boy kept quietly, probably traumatized, or just didn't want to share the details in front of 20 other kids. The teacher was clearly annoyed, so she kept asking the same thing, and she said something like, "Well, something burned down yesterday. What was it? Was it your book? Your cat? Your butt?" I just thought it was really mean thing to say after somebody lost everything in a fire.